years, we've heard you talk about the former president. You have called him a fraud, a con artist. You've said
a lot worse names than that.
He's a New Yorker like you, and you have watched this brand of BS.
I think of how absurd it is. And this might be the one case where that could be it for him. It's a state case. He's sick. He is really, genuinely a sick person that somehow has been allowed into our system.
Robert De Niro just called Trump a gangster, and not the movie kind. Live on TV, the iconic actor tore into the former president with a critique so brutal, Trump's weak comeback made it even worse. How did De Niro expose deeper truths about Trump's leadership while sparking a debate about democracy itself? Before we continue, if you appreciate this content, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It's free and it helps our channel grow. Thank you. Now back to the video. Robert De Niro isn't just playing gangsters in movies anymore. Now he's calling out real ones. And he didn't tiptoe into it either. During a live TV moment that pretty much stopped everyone in their tracks, De Niro unleashed a verbal smackdown on Trump that even his toughest film characters would have been proud of. He didn't sugarcoat it, calling Trump a clown, a fraud, and straight up labeling him a national embarrassment.
Does it give you some sense, not of joy, but of relief at least, that he's potentially facing some consequences? Because as you've said before, this guy's a con artist and he's gotten away with it for years.
I'm not calling him, I'm tired of calling him names. He just can't be anywhere near the office of the presidency. It's funny, I was just thinking that he actually became president. He could have done good things. Instead, he had to do it all wrong.
Keep in mind, this wasn't on some late night comedy roast. This was serious, raw, and direct. De Niro wasn't holding back, and honestly, it was kind of like watching someone finally say what the room was thinking, but louder. This wasn't just your average celebrity venting online. No vague subtweets or sneaky jabs here. De Niro dug in. His words cut sharp, painting Trump as more of a reckless schoolyard bully than a leader. He described him as the kind of guy who thrives only when dragging others down, the type who turns every disagreement into a circus. De Niro said it flat out. Trump had turned politics into a playground, but not the fun kind. More like the one where a few kids always try to hog the swings while throwing dirt at everyone else. And what hit harder than his jabs was the truth fueling them. This wasn't just about personal dislike, it was about the serious damage De Niro believed Trump had done to democracy itself. Here's the thing about De Niro's critique. It wasn't some comic rant. It wasn't someone just blowing off steam for ratings. There was real weight behind his words, and it came from frustration that many Americans seem to share. A recent poll by Ipsos found that around 60% of Americans feel Trump doesn't have the character to be president. That's not a small number. De Niro tapped into that same frustration, putting words to what so many people had been thinking but maybe didn't have the platform or the guts to say out loud. This wasn't about Hollywood picking on Washington. This was a call out of leadership, or the lack of it.
You've played a lot of bad guys. Would you ever play Donald Trump?
Never. There's nothing about him, there's not one redeeming thing in him that I can see, ever. He's so, as we all know, so narcissistic and self-centered. I don't think they really understand. And historically, from what I see, even in Nazi Germany, they had it with Hitler.
And boy, did it strike a nerve. Social media blew up as clips of De Niro's comments spread like wildfire. You had people who applauded him for speaking truth to power, while others, primarily Trump loyalists, accused him of just being another entitled celebrity trying to stay relevant. But what really stuck out was how many people seemed to view De Niro's comments as less about one man and more about what the country is actually grappling with. His words became kind of the spark for a much bigger conversation about what accountability looks like, the role of truth in politics, and how far the bar has fallen. And then of course Trump himself entered the chat. There's no way a guy like Trump was going to ignore something so direct, especially when it came from someone as high profile as Robert De Niro. But in true Trump fashion, his response didn't just fail to shut it down, it actually added fuel to the fire. Trump's reaction was exactly what you'd expect: petty, thin-skinned, and perfectly designed to miss the point entirely. But before we get to just how messy Trump's reply was, let's circle back to why De Niro's critique stuck so deeply. The way he went after Trump wasn't random. system, his words reflected frustrations that go beyond politics and straight into the heart of what America says it stands for: honesty, responsibility, and fairness. And when De Niro called Trump a fraud and a gangster, you couldn't help but notice the double meaning. Sure, it was a personal jab, but it also feels like a warning about what happens when people let unchecked power thrive. Coming from a guy who's been in his share of gangster stories, it's easy to see why the message landed hard. De Niro didn't just make it personal though, and that's what made it stand out. He shifted the conversation, making it more about what Trump represents, and looking at how Trump has polarized the country with ongoing investigations and that looming January 6th baggage. The tension behind De Niro's critique felt even sharper. It wasn't just an actor venting about a politician, it was a battle of ideas about where this country is headed and who gets to steer the wheel. So yeah, De Niro's words may have burned Trump's ego, but they also reignited a lot of other frustrations lying under the surface for many Americans. It was a moment that wasn't just explosive, it was an unfiltered reality check. And now, as you'd probably guess, Trump's weak attempt at clapping back only made him look worse. Because if there's one thing we've seen time and time again, it's that Trump doesn't handle direct criticism well, especially when it comes wrapped in a boxing glove like De Niro's words. Trump called Robert De Niro a washed-up actor, hoping to dismiss him with a single lazy insult. But if there's one thing Trump should know by now, it's that De Niro doesn't rattle that easily. Instead of backing off, De Niro slammed Trump even harder. For a guy who's made a career out of intimidating his enemies, Trump's response here felt less like a knockout punch and more like one of those awkward swings that misses completely. This wasn't exactly a fresh insult from Trump either. Claiming someone is irrelevant or past their prime is just one of his go-to moves when he feels cornered. It's textbook Trump: attack the person rather than confront what they're actually saying. But calling De Niro washed up doesn't really land when you think about it. Here's an actor who's won 2 Oscars, starred in films people still talk about decades later, and oh yeah, is still acting today. Insulting someone's career doesn't hit as hard when they've already solidified themselves as a legend. If this was an attempt to take the focus off what De Niro said and make people question his reputation, it didn't stick. What made Trump's insult feel even weaker was how flat it was compared to the sharpness of De Niro's criticism. De Niro didn't just call Trump names, he made specific pointed accusations. He painted Trump not just as an embarrassment, but as a man who behaves like a gangster, who operates outside the rules. And he didn't mean the charming kind of gangster Hollywood likes to romanticize. De Niro was talking about someone who avoids accountability, does whatever benefits them, and puts ethics on the back burner as often as possible. In a few words, De Niro summed up what many critics have been saying about Trump for years, but he did it in a way that felt tough, personal, and impossible for Trump to ignore. Of course, the irony of Trump calling De Niro washed up while he himself is constantly dodging criticism about his actions speaks volumes. Trump is a man who's faced impeachment twice, is under investigation in multiple cases, and still has lawsuits chasing him left and right. Yet instead of addressing anything De Niro said about his leadership or character, his response is, "You're irrelevant." It's like trying to swat a hornet with a pool noodle. Just not effective. De Niro's clapback, on the other hand, made sure to keep the spotlight exactly where it belonged, on Trump. By sticking to the gangster comparison, De Niro didn't just insult Trump, he kept pointing to a bigger issue. When De Niro calls Trump a gangster, he's not just insulting his personality, he's calling out the way Trump runs his operation, bending the rules, avoiding accountability, and doing whatever he wants regardless of the fallout. That kind of behavior doesn't just hurt Trump's ego, it brings up real fears about what unchecked leadership looks like. For a country that claims to value things like democracy and justice, that's not something people can rush past. That's where De Niro's response really gets people thinking. What he's describing isn't just a critique of one man, it's a criticism of what happens when someone like Trump is allowed to bend the system in their favor. And it's not hard to see parallels in history. De Niro's warning about Trump behaving like a gangster echoes the dirtier parts of political history, not just in America, but across the world, where leaders went unchecked and left destruction in their path. De Niro's words hit hard because they don't let us brush it off as just another celebrity feud. They remind us that this is about something much bigger. Meanwhile, Trump's insult didn't exactly rally the internet behind him. If anything, social media ate it up, but mostly to point out how ineffective it was. People were quick to note that calling someone like De Niro washed up only made Trump look insecure, especially since De Niro clearly wasn't about to back down. And just like that, Trump's attempt to steal the narrative back only amplified De Niro's message. De Niro didn't even need to keep the fight going. His critique stayed in the spotlight because it was clear, unapologetic, and rooted in something bigger than petty insults. This whole exchange says more about the state of politics than either man alone. Gone are the days where leaders face criticism with measured responses or grace. What this feud really reflects is an era where accountability seems like it's constantly on the chopping block. De Niro isn't just calling out Trump here, he's putting a magnifying glass on the entire system and asking people to decide whether they're okay with it. And in the process, Trump's weak, sputtering insult does nothing but highlight how little he's willing to reckon with those questions. While De Niro's words carry weight, Trump's attempt to brush them off just shrinks in comparison. This isn't just a feud between an actor and a politician, it's a snapshot of a deeper battle over what America stands for. De Niro's fiery words resonated because they echoed the anxiety of millions who feel democracy isn't a guarantee anymore. And let's be honest, those words didn't just call out Trump, they challenged all of us to decide what kind of country we want. If silence is comfort, then speaking up is courage. So the question is, are we listening? Democracy stumbles when we look away, because when the stakes are this high, staying quiet isn't an option anymore.